Hello, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everybody. Hope you're all having a lovely day today. Thank you very much for all the comments on all the videos yesterday. Well, there's been a lot of videos coming out. There's a lot happening, especially as we get nearer to the coronation. And I have made notes and I have not lost my piece of paper. Firstly, so many of you have said that you want to make a tiara or buy a tiara. They have some fantastic ones on Amazon, really cheap, or Claire's, as some of you have suggested. Some of you have said that you have old tiaras from days of ballet performances. Let's do it. Let's all wear a tiara on the coronation day. I think that would be lovely. And it brings a bit of magic into it, doesn't it? I think we're probably going to have an English tea. I bought this years ago, so I'll probably utilise that, and we shall be watching in all our regalia. Some of you have said, where can you get tiaras? There is a website that is really good that I use called DHgate. The thing is, it's a directory website for suppliers from China, Japan, Nepal, India. It's fantastic. You can get really good quality stuff there. You don't have to buy it in bulk like Alibaba. You can buy single items, very, very cheap. All I would say is if you do buy off DHgate, be aware that because they're from different economies, there can be big duty to pay when the items arrive. My tiara just fell apart. It's rubbish that. It looked good on camera, and thank you all very much for the compliments, but it's awful. I wake up this morning and all the diamonds have fallen off. There's a lot of them stuck to the floor I keep finding. So, but I've got my eye on one on DHgate. But the mistake I made with DHgate was a few years ago. I ordered all the Christmas presents for the kids from them, and I got mobile phones, touchscreen ones, you know, for the internet. This is years and years ago. I got them really cheap. They were about $10 each. And I was so pleased with myself, but I made the mistake of having them ordered to the Marina in Spain, which of course is in the Ring of Steel, the European Union, and there was hell to pay, and I had to pay hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of euros to pay for them. So I learned my lesson after that. I only buy one or two things on DHgate, and I generally get them sent to Jib because it was never a member of the single market or customs union, and they're for private, you know, personal use. And then just wear it across the border. They're not really looking for that sort of thing. They're looking for cigarettes and stuff like that. I suppose it is a bit naughty, but they're just trinkets and stuff. I think I'll be quite safe with my metal tiara that I'm going to get for the coronation. I might get it. I might not. I might make another one. So yeah, and one lady said she has a display in her bathroom and has a tiara in it, a copy of, I think it's the girls tiara. I can't remember, but fantastic. And also, a lot of you had said that, well, you didn't think that Meghans' Queen Mary bandeau was real because it had a lot of rainbow in it and refraction, which of course diamonds don't. Well, maybe, for obvious reasons. I can see where you're all coming from. But it may be that Queen Mary's bandeau isn't diamond. I have a pen, which I'm going to show you. This cost me about $400. This is a Presidium pen, and it has a metal nib, and whenever I go to a jeweller's, I take this little guy with me, and it tests gemstones. It's got a pretty decent library in it. It can't distinguish very easily things like citrine or tourmaline. It gives a list of what it may or may not be. But it can identify diamond, sapphire, ruby, of course. Well, it doesn't identify sapphire and ruby because they're the same thing. It's just you choose a colour. It says, you know, okay, I've tested it, what colour, and in the colour library, if you choose red, it comes up ruby. If you choose any other colour, it comes up sapphire. And it's really useful. And I have been to jewellers. We bought my daughter a charm bracelet, and I was choosing the charms in the shop. I took my pen, this was in Jib, and much to the disgust of the jeweller, I was testing every single one, and he was saying this is a sapphire because it was blue, and I'd test it and I'd say it's not, it's iolite, which actually is even cooler. I love iolite. It's got a bit of a purpley hue to it, and but he was selling these gemstones, I guess because he didn't know. And I think that's what's happened with a lot of the royal jewels, because technology has come on so much and the study of gemology has come on a lot. I'm a big fan of the Gemological Institute of America. And I think that they discovered that what they thought was a big ruby on the front of the crown, the king's crown, then they discovered was actually spinel. But again, that's super cool. There are so many different gemstones out there, loads of different species. I think a lot of you know I have my own little collection of pretty rare gemstones. I mean, they're just rocks, really. They're unpolished, most of them. So it may be that they just didn't know at the time, and they would class something as diamond. You can have tourmaline, which looks like diamond, is white, but has lots of colour and refraction. And I did actually think that when I watched back Princess Diana's wedding with the Spencer tiara. There's a lot of rainbow in the Spencer tiara, so it could well be something a lot more fascinating and interesting and rare than diamond. Coming to which, this was my mother's engagement ring. It's a diamond. Because my mum and dad were really poor, his grandfather was a tailor for some duke or lord, and as a thank you present, he'd given him a platinum tie pin with the diamond in the middle. So when my dad got engaged, my grandfather said to him, well, I've got an idea for an engagement ring. Why don't we ask your grandfather if we can have the tie pin and have it made into a wedding ring and an engagement ring? But the diamond has a big black flaw in it. If you look into it, there is a black spot. Now, at that time, that was considered a bad thing. And you know, all probably know, they talk about diamonds, clarity, quality. But these days, interestingly enough, gemologists are very interested in the carbon flaws, and it can actually make the diamond more valuable because of that unique quality. So, I mean, when we went to the Tower of London, my daughter and I were looking at the crown jewels. I don't know if they're the real thing or replicas for security, but some of them were decidedly dull. We were quite surprised. Some of them didn't look as good as that tiara I made out of diamonds, but Queen Mary's really sparkled. You could see a distinct difference. And she was a magpie. She loved diamonds and collecting things and all kinds of gemstones. So who knows? Perhaps her bandeau was not actually, that was the real bandeau, but it was not actually diamond. Right, so I've covered that. I'm just ticking my things off. And I recommend, if you're into jewellery, getting a Presidium pen. But they are, well, it was expensive. I bought this about 5 years ago, and it's brilliant. The only thing is, I tend not to tell people when I'm in company, because a friend of mine said, oh, test my engagement ring. And I thought, yikes, what if the pen says it's something, a cracker ring? So I have to be careful with that. Right, now, some of you have said that apparently Neil Sean said that Harry and Meghan have been invited. I hold Neil Sean in the highest regard, but he always says allegedly to cover himself. I don't know, obviously, who his sources are. And his sources may be mistaken, could be dodgy. I'm sure there's a lot of politics going on behind the scenes. So yes, I see Neil as a very honest and great reporter, but I'm still not buying it. I'm still not buying it. It just seems too weird for words, an email being sent. And also, a lot of you pointed out, there are seating plans. It's going to be a smaller congregation for the coronation. It's going to be a nightmare for them. I know this for a fact, because when my dad was the Under-Sheriff of Sussex, he had to work with the High Sheriffs. And one of the High Sheriffs one year had a brilliant idea and said, wasn't there a thing called the Chichester Cathedral service? I know what. Let's have one. Let's revive it. And my dad said, well, it's a part of a canon calendar. If we were going to revive it, that's in 14 days. And this High Sheriff said, yeah, good, do it. And my dad was like, what? In 14 days? And he and his assistant spent weekends, evenings, just with the seating plan. They couldn't put a more important bishop next to a lesser bishop. That would create insult. The security arrangements. And they did succeed, and they pulled it off, and they got the Chichester Cathedral service done in 14 days and managed to invite everybody and the security and all that. And this High Sheriff gave my dad a glass as a present for it, and my dad was like, great, thanks a lot. But they were a little bit more prepared for it. So that's that off my list. But no, I'm not having it. I just don't. I can't see it. I can't see them having received. Or as JJ again is very analytical and does hold my feet to the fire to make sure, you know, to double check I've got things right. And JJ made some really interesting observations looking at the actual wording of how it had been said. And it is quite cleverly worded, that press release. So it could have been an email saying, if we invite you, are you going to make a scene? I don't know, or are you going to go, or are you going to capitalise? There could have been lawyers, I suppose, who emailed them, testing the water, just to look at things from the other point of view. The garden party that we went to years ago in '87, I'm pretty sure I remember that I was supposed to go in 1986 when I was 16. And both my sisters had gone as well. It was the way they did it was like a debutante thing. And I seem to remember my dad saying to me, do you want to go to the garden party? And I had some friends at school who were very Republican, anti-monarchy, and they were like, oh, you're so privileged, Fiona, you should say no. So I'd said to him, oh, I don't know, maybe not. And then the next year I said, well, actually, I really would like to go. And he said, well, I will make inquiries to somebody. So they test you out to see if you would accept the invitation. I seem to remember something like that, but I can't really remember. Now, coming on to Meghan again. If I try and put myself in her shoes, how it might be for me, I guess you guys do this as well. I would have done things very differently to her. One of you guys, I forget the username, I'm sorry, but a lady of colour who unfortunately is suffering from chemotherapy at the moment, and I really hope you get through that and that you feel better soon. But she did say that she would, if she'd been Meghan, being a woman of colour, would have commissioned her own tiara and had African influence in it. What a brilliant idea. And then Meghan could have said, well, then that's my tiara, like the Spencer tiara, that will stay in mine and Harry's family and be an heirloom to hand down to our children, their children. Wouldn't that have been a marvellous opportunity for her? And then there needn't have been a row over access to tiaras for hairdressers and stuff. She would have had her own tiara. So that is one thing, definitely, that I would have done. Because let's put ourselves in Meghan's shoes for a minute. And this brings me to Nottingham Cottage. It's easy for us lot to I suppose, think, well, it's free and it's hardly a cottage. It's actually quite cute and it's in the middle of Kensington Palace. But when they're amongst their own in the hierarchy, they may have been looking at places like Gatcombe Park and where Sophie and Edward live and all the other royal residences, and they may have felt inferior. So me, personally, I would have embraced it and thought, well, I don't care. I'm going to just make the best of what I've got and go off in another direction and not be kicking off about it. I wouldn't actually have wanted anybody to know, even if I'd felt like that. I wouldn't want anybody to think I'm that ungrateful. And I'd have just muscled down and thought, well, William and Catherine lived in Nottingham Cottage for a couple of years. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to dig in and it's going to be great. We'll just have a laugh. So I really, well, she's a different type of character, isn't she? And also, I think another thing that Meghan could have done, and I thought this all along, being American, she could have been the bridging gap between America and the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth by doing documentaries, perhaps even with Edward, where he would be showing her around, or a curator could be showing her around various palaces, various artefacts, like Julie Montagu does. And she could have embraced it and shown that she's making effort to learn about the new country. But no, she didn't do any of that either. So that's a big disappointment, really, isn't it? A very big disappointment. Oh yes, and finally, on the MI6 and MI5 thing, years ago, I'm sure I remember a story where MI5 this is MI5 headquarters, not Babylon, it's a different building. they were having their new headquarters fitted out, and they'd just finished, and then they found out that one of the electricians, I think, or plasterers, had been a member of the IRA, and they had to tear the whole building apart just to be on the safe side because of what had happened in the Grand Hotel in Brighton when the bomb was hidden. There you go, bomb, that'll set the algorithm. It was hidden apparently in the bathroom where Margaret Thatcher's suite was. God knows how so many people got out of that alive, and a lot didn't, and of course Norman Tebbit and his wife. Anyway, so there you go. So all that glitters is not necessarily diamond. It could be something a lot cooler. How would you have dealt with the royal family? How would you have done things differently? Easy for us to say. We'd be in her shoes. But everybody has a cross to bear in life of one manner or another. And life is about not the hand you've been dealt, but how you handle it, I think, to a large extent. Of course, some people are dealt a really, really bloody awful hand, and others are born into utter privilege, like Harry. As always, thank you very much for listening, thoughts and opinions.